She lost. The scoreboard made that perfectly clear. 6-4, 6-3. Black and white. Final. But here's the part nobody is talking about. Here's the part that made an entire stadium full of Europeans stop, stare, and refuse to leave. A 20-year-old girl from the Philippines just walked off a tennis court having lost to the world number 2, and somehow, she left that arena more powerful than the woman who beat her. How does that happen? How does a loss become the most watched moment of an entire Grand Slam week? I'm going to show you exactly how. And I promise you, by the time this is over, you will understand something about sport and about human beings that you didn't understand before. Rome, Italy. May 11, 2026. The Foro Italico's Centro Court. One of the most iconic sporting venues on the planet, surrounded by marble statues of ancient athletes frozen in eternal effort. 65 years of Italian Open history had been played on that clay. Champions had wept there. Legends had been born there. But nothing had prepared that stadium for what was about to happen on this particular Sunday evening. Because what unfolded here was not just a tennis match. It was something far older, far more human, and far more devastating than tennis. This was a story about belonging, about sacrifice, about the weight of carrying an entire people's hope on 20-year-old shoulders, and what happens when those shoulders refuse to buckle, even in defeat. Let's go back 24 hours. Because to understand what happened on that court, you need to understand what Alex Eala had already done in the 2 weeks leading up to this moment. She had arrived in Rome ranked 42nd in the world. That's not a number that gets you headline coverage. That's not a number that fills stadiums. But by the time she walked onto Centro Court to face Elena Rybakina, something had shifted, something the rankings couldn't measure. In the first round, she faced world number 45 Magdalena Frech. A grinder, a fighter, someone who does not give away games, sets, or break points without a war. And Eala got one. She was broken. She fell behind 3-1 in the final set. 9 break points saved across that match alone. 9 times Frech had her racket aimed at Eala's tournament, and 9 times Eala found a way to survive. She won the third set. She won the match. She was through. Round 2. World number 31 seed Wang Xinyu. A player who had broken Eala's heart in Auckland months earlier. A loss that had stung, that had kept her up at night, that had forced her back onto the practice court with something to prove. What happened in Rome was not forgiveness. It was revenge. Straight sets. Clinical. Controlled. Done. Her ranking jumped from 42 to 38 before the third round even began. The Filipino fans who had traveled from London, from Zurich, from Amsterdam, from Dublin, OFWs who had not seen the Philippines in years, some of them in decades, filled the Foro Italico wearing red, white, and blue. Their flags waved in the Roman heat. Their chants rolled like thunder off those marble statues. Laban Alex. Fight, Alex. Fight. But this round was different. This round was Elena Rybakina. Take a moment to understand what that name means in professional tennis right now. The Kazakh star had walked into the 2026 season like someone who had been quietly told a secret that everyone else was still figuring out. 29 wins on the WTA Tour before Rome had even reached its semifinals. 29. She had taken the Australian Open in January with the kind of serene, weaponized composure that made the best players in the world look slightly confused. Her serve was not just fast, it was precise to a degree that bordered on mechanical. Her ground strokes were not just powerful, they were placed with the cold intelligence of someone who has studied your weaknesses and filed them away for exactly this moment. She was, quite simply, one of the most complete players on tour. The odds makers had already settled this match in their spreadsheets. Most analysts had predicted a comfortable win for the world number 2 inside of an hour and a half. The script was written. The outcome was assumed. Everyone in tennis had already mentally moved on to the quarterfinals. Alex Eala had not read that script. The opening set began with the kind of tension that fills a stadium silently, the tension of a crowd that knows it might be watching something special but is terrified to believe it too soon. Rybakina opened. Clinical. Precise. She broke Eala's serve early, jumping to 2-0, and the Filipino flags dipped just slightly in the stands. Not folded. Not put away. Just dipped. Waiting. Then Eala did something that changed the entire atmosphere of that stadium. She broke back. Immediately. 2-2. The stadium did not erupt. It detonated. What followed over the next 30 minutes was some of the highest quality tennis ever produced by a 20-year-old on clay at this level. Eala fired 13 winners in that first set, her highest single-set total all season. She was not surviving. She was not grinding. She was playing with the fearless, attack-first mentality of someone who has decided that this is her court and Rybakina is the one playing on borrowed time. She stepped inside the baseline, took the ball early, and redirected Rybakina's own pace back at her. Faster, sharper, more dangerous than it had arrived. Rybakina, for the first time in weeks, looked like someone who was genuinely uncomfortable. At 3-3, Eala earned a break point. The rally lasted 14 shots. She moved the Kazakh star from corner to corner, forcing her wider, then wider still, then waited, patient as stone, for the moment the short ball would arrive. When it did, she stepped in, wound up, and drilled a forehand down the line that landed flush on the baseline with a crack that silenced the crowd for half a second before the noise hit like a wall. Eala would serve for the set. Her mother, Riza, was in the stands, wiping tears. The royal box was leaning forward. The Filipino flags were waving in synchronized rhythm like a single breathing organism. Eala walked to the baseline, bounced the ball twice, 3 times, looked at the crowd, exhaled, and served. Down the center line. Rybakina lunged, got her racket on it, but only deflected it into the net. 15 love. The crowd howled. Another serve, another winner. 30 love. But Rybakina, cold and clinical as advertised, refused to fold. She clawed back. Deuce. Then again. Deuce again. A backhand sailed wide, break point. The crowd held its breath. Set tied at 5-5. The tiebreak that followed was experience versus youth on the most unforgiving stage. Rybakina's composure prevailed. She took the first set, 7-5 in the breaker. But what nobody fully processed in that moment was what the first set had already proven. This was not going to be a routine win. The second set was where the real story began. Rybakina struck first again. Break, 3-1. The flags dipped again. A few people in the upper tiers began moving toward the exits, not Filipinos, but the neutral observers who had seen this pattern before, who thought they recognized the shape of what was coming. And then Eala broke back. 2-3, held serve. 3-3. The commentators, who had been politely acknowledging Eala's effort, suddenly changed register. One of them said something that cut through everything. She's not afraid of her. Most players facing Rybakina start playing to not lose. They get tentative. They make errors. Eala is playing to win. She's going for her shots. She's believing. He paused as if the thought surprised even him. She genuinely believes she can win this match. At 3-3, Rybakina pushed back. She found 2 break points in the next game, the crowd pressing so tight against the moment it felt like the stadium itself was holding its breath. Eala saved both of them. Then at deuce, for the 5th time, she unleashed a forehand winner into the corner that left the world number 2 flatfoot. The game was hers. The crowd went from tense to delirious in under a second. But the thing about champions is that they know how to regroup when someone is threatening to embarrass them. Rybakina reasserted. 2 games in a row. 5-3, serving for the match. At 5-4, with Eala facing elimination, she earned a break point. The rally that followed was 10 shots of pure, mutual destruction. Both players going for the lines, both committing, both refusing to set up for something comfortable. When the short ball finally came, Eala was ready. Forehand, down the line, baseline crack. She was serving to stay alive at 5-4. The crowd was not simply cheering anymore. They were pleading. The Filipino flags were not waving. They were trembling, gripped by hands that understood what they were watching. Rybakina, composed as ever, broke back in the next game. 6-3, final score. 6-4, 6-3. It was over. Elena Rybakina raised her arms. The Kazakh star had advanced to the quarterfinals. Rybakina's serve had been untouchable, 6 aces, 0 double faults. And the scoreboard read, in clean flat numbers, exactly what had happened. A loss. 20-year-old Filipino girl loses to world number 2 at the Italian Open. The story, as far as the scoreboard was concerned, was finished. And then something happened that nobody planned for. Nobody scripted. Nobody expected. The crowd did not leave. Most crowds, when their hero loses in a tournament, follow a pattern that is universal and almost reflexive. The flags come down first. The scarves get tucked away. People begin the quiet choreography of disappointment, the long exhale, the reaching for coats, the avoidance of eye contact with strangers who shared this hope and now share this hurt. The energy drains out of a stadium the way water drains from a basin. You can feel it happening. You can almost time it. Not at the Foro Italico. Not tonight. The Philippine flags were still up. All of them. Waving. The chant that had filled that stadium for 2 weeks did not fade. It got louder. Laban Alex. Laban Alex. The sound bounced off the marble statues of ancient Roman athletes and rolled up into the evening sky above Rome. Elena Rybakina, still at the net, victory in hand, looked out at the stands with an expression that was not triumph. It was confusion. The crowd was cheering for the woman who had just lost. They were standing for the woman who had just lost. They were chanting, louder with every repetition, for the woman who had just lost. Alex Eala stood at the center of the court. Racket raised. Eyes glistening. She had just played 92 minutes of high-intensity professional tennis against one of the most formidable opponents in the world. She had drawn 32 unforced errors from the Kazakh star, a player who averages fewer than 20 in most of her wins. She had broken Rybakina's serve multiple times. She had limited her own unforced errors to 17. She had competed with everything she had until the last point. And she had lost. But the numbers were not what the crowd was responding to. Not even close. She gave everything, a woman in the third row said, tears streaming freely down her face, not attempting to hide them. She didn't win. But she gave everything. That's all we ever ask for. That's all. An elderly man in the row behind her was holding his Philippine flag with trembling arms, not lowering it. He had traveled from London for this tournament. He had been away from the Philippines for 20 years. Missed birthdays, missed holidays, missed funerals, missed all the ordinary moments that make a life. When I watch Alex play, he said, I feel like I'm home. He paused. His voice cracked. That's worth more than any victory. What nobody realized in that moment, not the tournament officials, not the commentators, not the cameras sweeping across the packed stands, was that the most powerful moment of the entire Italian Open had not happened yet. It was about to. The tournament schedule was tight. The next match was waiting. The courts needed to be prepared. The officials in the royal box were consulting their timelines, exchanging glances. This was not in the program. This had not been planned. But the tournament director, watching the crowd from his position in the royal box, made a decision in the space of about 5 seconds. He looked at what was happening on that court. He looked at those flags, still raised. He heard the chant, still growing. And he said 3 words that changed everything about how this Italian Open would be remembered. Let her speak. Alex Eala walked to the microphone. Her eyes were red. Her voice was unsteady. But her words were the kind of clear, unguarded honesty that cuts right through everything rehearsed and calculated and managed. I want to say thank you, she began, to every Filipino who traveled here, to everyone who waved a flag, to everyone who chanted my name until their voices gave out. She stopped. Her voice caught on something. She pressed through. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the victory you deserved. I'm sorry I couldn't win. What happened next is difficult to describe in a way that does it justice. The crowd did not respond with silence or sadness. They responded with the loudest sound that stadium had produced all week. Someone shouted from deep in the stands, a voice that somehow cut through 5,000 people, "You have nothing to be sorry for." Another voice, from a different section entirely, almost before the first had finished, "You made us proud." Eala's tears began to fall. She did not try to stop them. This week has been the most special of my career, she said, not because of the results. Because of you. Because of the flags. Because of the chants. Because of the love. I've never felt anything like it in my life. She looked out over the sea of red, white, and blue, thousands of Filipinos who had spent money they didn't have to be in this stadium, who had taken days off work, who had traveled overnight on buses and trains and budget flights just to wave a flag and shout her name in a country that was not their own. I promise you this, she said. I will be back. I will be stronger. I will keep fighting. And one day, I will win this tournament. She paused. Just for a moment. Not for me. For all of you. The stadium shook. Laban Alex. Laban Alex. Laban Alex. The chant echoed through the Foro Italico long after she walked off that court. Long after the next match had been announced. Long after the Roman evening had settled into dark. And somewhere in that noise, in that extraordinary collision of loss and love and promise, something happened that very few sporting moments ever managed to produce. The crowd was not comforting a loser. They were celebrating someone who had just shown them who she was, completely, without armor, without image management, without calculation. She had stood at a microphone in front of thousands of people and been entirely, devastatingly real. And they responded to that realness with everything they had. The footage spread before the night was over. Within hours of her speech, the clip had been viewed across social media more than 50 million times. 50 million. Not a match highlight. Not a winning point. A 20-year-old standing at a microphone with tears on her face, speaking to the people who had crossed an ocean to believe in her. The comment sections told their own story. Viewers from countries that had never sent a single person to the Italian Open were writing that they had watched Eala's speech 3 times. 4 times. That they had cried. That they did not know why they were crying. That this was the most powerful thing they had seen in sport all year. Coco Gauff posted first among the players. This is everything. Play for the joy. Everything else will follow. So proud of you, Alex. Naomi Osaka followed within the hour. I wish I had understood this years ago. She's ahead of her time. The speech, the promise, the tears, it's all real. That's why we love her. And then Elena Rybakina, the woman who had just beaten her, who had just advanced to the quarterfinals, who had every reason in the world to be focused on her own campaign, posted a message that nobody expected. She fought hard. She pushed me today. She's going to be a great player. And the way her fans support her, I've never seen anything like it. Even in victory, Rybakina was pointing back at Eala. Italian newspapers devoted their sports front pages to a story they had not anticipated covering. La Repubblica wrote that in an era built on manufactured drama, Eala had offered something genuinely rare, authenticity. That she had lost the match but won the hearts of Rome. Corriere della Sera called the Filipino fans who had filled the Foro Italico something the tournament had never quite witnessed before. Not spectators, but the community. Not a crowd, but a family that happened to be watching tennis. The Italian Open organizers, moved by what they had witnessed, announced something that had never been done in the tournament's history. They would reserve a dedicated section of Centro Court specifically for Filipino fans at next year's edition. A direct, formal response to what the Eala effect had done to their tournament. The tournament director, in his own press statement, did not mince his language. "We've never seen anything like it," he said. "The energy, the passion, the love, it was extraordinary. We want to honor that. We want them to come back. We want them to know that this stadium belongs to them too." Alex Eala left Rome the same way she had arrived. No entourage. No private jet. A racket bag, her mother, and a heart full of something that is much harder to carry than a trophy, the weight of a promise. She flew economy class. The OFWs who passed her in the airport did double takes, then approached her quietly, not with cameras, but with handshakes and wet eyes. She accepted all of it. Every one. The Italian Open ended without Eala lifting the trophy. Her name is not in the final draw. But here is what the tournament's history books will actually record about the 2026 edition in Rome. Not the score. Not the draw. The footage of a young Filipino woman at a microphone, telling thousands of people who had sacrificed to be there that she was sorry, and those thousands of people shouting back that she had absolutely nothing to apologize for. The ranking will update. The points will be calculated. The season will move forward. But something happened in Rome that does not move forward. It stays. Because now there is a promise hanging in the air above the Foro Italico. A specific, personal, public promise from a 20-year-old who looked at thousands of people who believe in her and said the words out loud. I will be back. I will be stronger. I will keep fighting. And one day I will win this tournament. Not for me, for all of you. The hashtag that followed trended for days. Filipino fans across the world shared photos of themselves holding their flags with one caption repeating over and over, in different languages, in different cities, on different continents. We'll be waiting, Alex. We'll be here. This is the part of the story where I ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it before you scroll away. We live in an era of sports where the dominant question is always the same. Who won? The scoreboard, the ranking, the trophy, the prize money. We have built entire industries around the answer to that one question. And yet here we are. Rybakina won. Rybakina advanced. Rybakina has 29 wins this season and an Australian Open title and a quarterfinal in Rome. And the moment that 50 million people have watched, the moment that Italian newspapers are writing about, that fellow Grand Slam champions are posting about, that a tournament director is restructuring his seating allocation because of, has nothing to do with Rybakina. It has everything to do with the 20-year-old who lost to her. And said thank you anyway. And made a promise anyway. And cried in front of everyone without trying to hide it. What does that tell you about what sport actually is, underneath all the rankings and results and prize money? What does that tell you about what human beings are actually looking for when they fill a stadium and wave a flag and chant someone's name until their voice gives out? I think you already know the answer. I think that's exactly why you're still watching. When Alex Eala returns to Rome next year, and she will return because she said so, and because she is exactly the kind of person who means what she says, the question that matters will not be about her serve percentage or her breakpoint conversion. It will be whether she is standing at that microphone again with the trophy in her hand, looking out at the same crowd that never stopped believing, making good on the most public promise she has ever made. Whether she wins or loses, that crowd will be there. The flags will be there. And the chant will be there. Laban Alex. Fight, Alex. Because some stories don't end when the scoreboard does. Some stories are just getting started.